All right, we're just going to jump into it today because we have a lot to cover.
Who are we talking about today?
We're talking about John Brown.
All right, John Brown, friend of the show. Do you want to get into it first? We talk about, mostly communism or socialism or anarchism. Does John Brown really fit into any of those?
I don't think so. So I guess, good point. We should probably get that out at the beginning. This isn't a strictly communist story by quite a long shot, but it is a story about liberation and fighting against a state, and I think it's got some interesting stuff in there.
Okay, awesome.
So yeah, John Brown, most known for being an abolitionist and most definitely known for his raid on Harper's Ferry, which was a federal armory. But before all that, let's go back in time. Got to be born, as I've heard.
It's important. It's an important step of the process.
Yes, and he was born May 9th, 1800. This makes it very easy because you can just do the math on all the dates and figure out how old he was for things.
Yeah, it's good to have an even number.
Oh, yeah.
Birth year for that.
Good for you. I always have to do uncomfortable math. Okay.
Yeah.
This guy, born in Connecticut, the fourth of 8 children. Both his grandfathers were in the Revolutionary War. Fun fact, he had a brother named Salmon.
Like the fish?
Like the fish, he also named one of his sons Salmon. So, I guess it was a family name.
People used to, just name their kids all sorts of things back in the day. And people like to complain now, oh, modern people, how they name their kid this and that and the other. They've been doing that all the time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, salmon, guys. Come on.
Literal salmon.
Not a name. Sorry if you listen, your name is Salmon.
It's fine. It's not a bad name. It's just
fine.
Unorthodox.
It's very strange. I mean, I like the fish. It's delicious. All right, so Brown was raised in a strict Calvinist household. Basically, their deal was they believed that you would, be judged by God at the end. And so they believed in kind of a righteousness or God would punish you. So, yeah.
Yeah, like Calvinism is all about here we go. Let's get into some shitty theology.
Give it to me.
All right, I think Calvinism is all about predestination in terms of there's a certain elect, right? That's already chosen, but it kind of manifests itself in the world based on you can tell who's the elect based on how cool how Christian they behave or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that fit with what John Brown's family was like?
I think so. I want to say, though, I don't know, just based on his kind of life choices, it seems like he sees things very black and white of this is wrong and this is not wrong and this is what I'm going to do about it, So it almost feels at times like he's running a holy war, not in a strict, I'm going to convert people sense, but just he always feels obligated by his faith to go start shit up.
It's a prime motivating factor for him.
I would say yes. All right, so the family moves around a bit. First, they moved to Hudson, Ohio, which actually was kind of a hotbed for the abolitionist movement at the time. Its founder, David Hudson, was a friend of Owen Brown, John's father, who was a fierce abolitionist who favored a slave rebellion. So, yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, Owen Brown began kind of participating in Hudson's anti-slavery work, and their house actually was a safe house on the way to the Underground Railroad, or I guess on it. Yeah, not on the way. John also studied with abolitionist Elizur Wright, since there was no high school available. There wasn't anything past elementary school. So yeah, you can see very early on there are a ton of abolitionists around him, and he's just this is what I should be doing.
So he was he grew up in it.
Yes.
He didn't. Okay. That's interesting because sometimes, a lot of time we have kind of class traitor types, but he's kind of I think they called them in socialist and communist circles, red diaper babies,
I can only hope to have one of those one day. I'm going to dye all my baby's diapers red.
That's more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah, I guess, if they're shit and blood or something, you probably need to know about that. So maybe not. Maybe just the outside.
All right.
Anyway, so yeah, he was very affected from like an early age. Like there's kind of an anecdote of when he was 12 years old and he was moving cattle for a guy, and the other boy working with him was a black kid, and this kid got beaten with an iron shovel. And Brown was like, hey, what the fuck? And was told, like, it's cool, he's a slave. And according to Brown's family, this is when he decided to, like, dedicate his life to the cause of abolitionism.
Man, starting young.
Yeah, 12 years old.
Nothing like a little childhood trauma to get you on the road to revolution.
Yeah, I'm sure. He kind of dicked around a lot.
All right.
I would say a lot of his early life is just him like moving from profession to profession. He starts off at 16 trying to be a minister, but like his eyes got inflamed, so like he couldn't study very much. I never figured out if like that went away or if it just like he had to limit the amount he spent reading, because like he still like reads and writes quite a bit. So I was like, I'm not super sure what was going on there. And then he did a lot of different things. He taught himself surveying from like just a book. He worked at a tannery, first his dad's and then started his own tannery. He helped erect a school, which was hosted in his home. He helped establish a post office and was the postmaster for a while. He went into the cattle and leather business, and he set up a congregational society.
All right. So he dabbled, shall we say.
He was a dabbler for sure.
I sympathize with that for sure.
I get it. So at some point he moves to Pennsylvania during some of this dabbling. He builds another tannery and a barn. And in that barn, he had a secret room to hide escaping slaves. It is estimated he helped 2,500 enslaved people make it to Canada.
Wow. All right. I was going to ask, because it'd suck if you built that, but then like no runaway slaves ever came to you to help. Like, I'm ready. I'm going to do it,
Free food.
But yeah.
And no one shows up.
Because it's a big risk. I mean, it was illegal to do that.
Yes. And we're going to get some of the legal ramifications too.
Right. But he got to actually do the heroic stuff. That's cool.
Yeah, I have this under a section I call some cool guy credentials, which is even though he's like, opening businesses and stuff like that, which are things we're normally not super into, he still like did some cool shit in the meantime. Like he was consistently like anti-slavery and I would say anti-authority as well.
Yeah, and we're still not like into that, but on the other hand, he's not really doing like full-on capitalist stuff. Like this is still kind of petty artisan shit, right? Like he's not opening a factory or anything.
It's a tannery, like yeah, like I think it's like a family business kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is, we're talking the 1820s, 1830s, like there's just not a lot of, big industrial concerns yet for him to be a part of.
At one point, he was fined for declining to serve in the militia. Another point, he refused to help a family drive off some indigenous people that were hunting in the area because he was friends with them. Like basically he had always tried to befriend the local indigenous people. Like he learned some of their languages and would invite them in for meals. So like he just did not fuck with racism basically of any kind.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
He and his son were expelled from their church for inviting a black person into their pew.
Wow.
And pretty much after that, he was like, I don't know if I'm into organized religion. Like, I'm kind of going to do my own thing.
What type of church did he go to? Because, that was a big thing leading up to the Civil War, was that a lot of the denominations split into northern and southern factions. Because, it was a big argument. The northern factions were more and more abolitionist. The southern factions started advancing positive defenses of slavery, saying it was a positive good and, justified in the Bible and things like that. And so, that was a long, they didn't reconcile till the 20th century, some of those.
Yeah, because they're churches still against interracial marriage and shit.
Yeah. And you still have the Southern Baptist Convention. That's where that comes from.
Ugh. Terrifying. Let's see, and let me read about this incident some more. The Congregational Church, which from A Clue on Jeopardy, I know that is a church that heavily emphasizes kind of I think it's the autonomy of smaller organizations, hence why it's called congregational.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it. Yeah, I don't know enough to speculate on this theological point.
We'll bullshit some of it, but not all of it.
Yes, you have to. So you have to have enough to like riff off of, you know?
Yes. You have to have enough to give a basic answer.
Yeah.
All right, personal life break. You know, we gotta do these. In 1820, he marries Dianthe Lusk, the daughter of his housekeeper. And this guy has 1 million children. She gave him 7. Some of them die because, you know, it's the 1820s and 30s. Things happen.
And it's in America, which is still like not great as far as...
Still not great, man.
But back then it was even worse.
So he kind of like has a stint of bad luck here. So it's going to sound pretty rough for the next, like, let's see, 10 or 20 years here.
Oh, man.
Starting in 1831, his youngest son dies at age 4. And then Brown himself falls ill and goes into debt. He did a lot of like land speculating, and it really bites him in the ass. 1832, his wife dies in childbirth along with their newborn son.
Oh.
Yeah, and then he marries another woman, the younger sister of a different housekeeper, so he has a type.
Okay, yeah. He likes relatives of housekeepers.
Apparently. Which I don't even know what that implies. Maybe they have some knowledge of cleaning.
No, I think it was just a common domestic, so it's like a class indicator. So that was,
Oh, yeah.
you know, it's a working class person. That was a common job that a woman could do. So that's, you know, I think that's more it.
Yeah, that probably makes more sense. They continue having a buttload of kids. They have 13 children together.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, this guy, every time I'm like, wait, he has another son? Like, he's so many sons.
But that's what you did back, or a lot of people did back then anyway.
A lot of people, yeah. He moves back to Ohio in 1836, because remember, he was in Pennsylvania for a minute, and he sets up another tannery. He became a bank director for a while and, like, had quite a bit of money, about $500,000 in today's money. But remember, the speculating didn't work out. He borrowed heavily and suffered a lot during the Panic of 1837. At one point, he was even jailed because he was like refusing to leave his land when a new owner showed up. So, yeah.
Oh man. So he did a little bit of capitalist stuff there then, getting into banking.
Yeah, but I mean, it didn't work.
Yeah, no, I think the Panic of 1837 is the one that Andrew Jackson basically caused with killing the second bank of the U.S.
Wasn't enough to kill all the Native American people?
No, he had to go after the bank too. Not enough blood on his hands. It wasn't literally, you know, but basically it just opened up all these state banks to like loan out a whole bunch of money, and you know, eventually that catches up with you and people find out there's nothing back in it, and then they do bank runs, and then boom.
Weird how these always happen.
Yeah. And meanwhile, everyone's speculating in real estate, and housing prices is going crazy because, you know, it just has nowhere to go but up until eventually that dries out and crashes too, you know? Yeah. So
tell me that all my money's in my fucking house.
See, but if you're not trying to, everybody's actually okay with that as long as you're not trying to do something with it.
Yeah, if you're not trying to sell it.
Yeah, you know, if you're just sitting in your house, it's going to be there eventually. When it comes back, it'll be worth even more. But
that's a good point.
Only if you've borrowed money to flip them, then those are the people who are fucked, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so my man, again, keeps dicking around. He tries to breed horses. He goes back to surveying. He tries farming. He keeps doing like a tanning business, and eventually has to declare bankruptcy in 1842. And that is the same year that 4 of his children die from dysentery. It's not all. 2 more die in 1846 and 1849. So, like, good thing he had all those kids because a lot of them did not make it.
That's one of the reasons people did that, you know. Just because they made it out of infancy, there was a whole lot of diseases and shit they could die off of, you know, after that.
For sure. And, yeah, good thing he had some backups.
So, were you able to tell from this part of his life, was he like, I mean, he wasn't thinking about abolitionism really? Like, he was mainly trying to get ahead in life?
I think he was doing both. Like, I kind of grouped this bio by more like themes. Okay. Kind of like I will mention like, okay, this part was in Pennsylvania and stuff like that. But a lot of those cool guy credentials were sprinkled in both during his time in Pennsylvania and Ohio. Like, he consistently showed up for black people.
Okay. But within the context of I don't know, startup or get rich quick sort of activities.
Yeah, he was still trying to like own businesses and shit and like just get his shit together basically. And at one point he kind of just like gives up, which is really interesting. We're kind of getting there basically.
All right, I'm interested to see that character turn.
Yeah, so he eventually finds himself in the sheep and wool business, and he kind of uses it to launch his abolitionist career properly because he gets himself assigned as an agent for wool growers in Massachusetts. And he's like representing the wool people from Ohio. But he's also like, while I'm here, maybe I'll talk to some abolitionist buddies. And so like he starts using that to like make connections.
All right. What sort of connections does he make?
Some big ones. He starts attending St. John's Congregational Church, which was a church founded by Black abolitionists, mostly former, enslaved people. And he saw lectures by Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth. He and Douglass end up like being pretty good pals. Like they correspond quite a bit. So
awesome.
So in 1848, he hears about this land grant program started in upstate New York, and it's called Timbuktu, but spelled differently than the traditional spelling.
All right.
So this was a plan from Garrett Smith, and he basically wanted to give land to Black people so that they could vote. It has some like paternalistic vibes. Like he had to deem who he thought was like worthy, and like Brown himself, like he built a house there so he could like help people along, which I'm like, I get what you're doing, but it does sound like a little like, let me help you poor dumb people, So
yeah, there was that sort of a sentiment was fairly common. It wasn't universal, but it was fairly common in the white abolitionist spheres at the time.
Yeah. I mean, maybe good intentions, just like bad messaging, not super sure. But yeah, he wanted to like help people establish farms up there, which like good luck because the soil fucking sucked.
Yeah.
So it was like super rocky and shit. Like they were not going to get a lot out of it, but he built his house there anyway. So
interesting.
Yeah, that's eventually where he ends up being buried.
I don't think it's such a bad scheme given the like possibilities at the time anyway.
Yeah. Like it's a good instinct, I think. So,
yeah.
In 1850, the United States passes the Fugitive Slave Act.
Boo.
Yeah, this is a really bad act, guys. Basically saying that free states have to help return any escaped enslaved people. Brown was like, hey, fuck that. I'm going to form a militia force. And he did. They're called the League of Gileadites, which has an unfortunate connotation these days if you've read any Margaret Atwood.
Oh,
but,
okay.
I mean, it's a biblical reference to, like, the bravest Israelites who, like, would face invaders. So it's not a Handmaid's Tale thing.
Yeah, like, that's where she got it from.
Yes, exactly.
On its own, it sounds kind of badass if you don't have that context,
Exactly.
Yeah, the Fugitive Slave Act, not only, free states had to return or whatever, like the government, but like regular people also had to like help the police round up escaped slaves, even though they had elected a government that had voted to make anti-slavery laws in their state.
Insane. Yeah, just obligating everyone to follow someone else's laws.
Yeah.
Insane. So yeah, this was a militant group that he founded, and they basically wanted to ensure no one would help people recapture and escaped slaves, and apparently it worked because no fugitives were taken from Springfield, Ohio.
Awesome. Yeah, there was a lot of this was pretty widespread. I don't know about militias so much, but community groups would put flyers out when they found out like a bounty hunter was coming to town to get someone. They would put up flyers like, hey, we saw this slave hunter, like beware if you've run away, if you're hiding, like keep your fucking head down, like somebody's here to get you, and that sort of a thing. Or they would in some cases they would bust into jails to free someone who had been apprehended as a potential runaway slave. they would bust into jails to free them.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And of course, when this was happening, and it gets in the news, all the southern states are crying out, and they're like, these states, they don't have the right to do this. They, the federal government needs to make them follow the law and all that.
Weird how those states' rights aren't as important.
It is interesting.
Oh, gosh. So, yeah, I mean, this is a federal fucking act that Brown just said, absolutely not. We're not doing that. I don't know. It was a complete act of, like, violent civil disobedience, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, like, how did they use violence? Did they punch people in the mouth or whatever when they were trying to, cooperate with the cops, or how did they do it?
So I'm looking at this, like, document that Brown wrote on how he thought the Gileadites should function. And this is basically like a mutual defense league.
Okay.
Hold on to your weapons and never be persuaded to leave them, part with them, or have them far away from you. Stand by one another and your friends while a drop of blood remains, and be hanged if you must, but tell no tales out of school. Make no confession.
Hell yeah.
Don't talk to cops.
ACAB.
Yeah. Oh my, he's like giving tips like, oh, try a lasso to get a slave catcher. That's so interesting. Okay. And a lot of this looks like it was also made up of black people as well.
In his militia?
Yeah.
That's
They're
cool.
like, a lot of them were fugitives themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is cool. All right. So yeah, look that up if you want to know more. It seems very cool. All right. We're going to move to Kansas. And so is Brown. And if you're asking why Kansas, well, Kansas is bleeding.
Yep. Bleeding Kansas.
Yes. So for our non-American listeners or people who have forgotten their high school history, bleeding Kansas is basically the lead up to the Civil War, where you basically had a mini state level civil war because there's arguments on whether or not it should be a slave state or a free state, and high level shit. You had a lot of people coming over from the border of Missouri to just like fuck shit up, both like electorally and violently.
Yeah.
I've got some numbers for the amount of electoral fraud here, which I think is really funny. A congressional committee found that 1,729 votes were fraudulent compared to 1,114 votes.
Oh, most of it was made up.
Most of it was made up. In one county, only 20 out of 604 voters were actually residents.
Wow.
So what you ended up having, like, all these racist fucks come over from Missouri, pretend they're residents, and vote in elections to determine what Kansas was going to do.
Yeah, and they all came over with guns to fight off the other side. And, the abolitionist side sent a bunch of people over, too.
They did.
In armed bands and everything. One of the things I think is interesting about bleeding Kansas is that the whole thing came about because Senator Stephen Douglas of Illinois wanted to build a transcontinental railroad through that territory, and he had to like get it organized because it was called unorganized territory at the time. He had to like get it into real territories, Kansas and Nebraska, so that like they could actually put federal dollars out there.
Oh, that's interesting.
And to do that, he had to get the Southern senators to quit blocking him because they wanted a transcontinental railroad through the South. So to do that, he was like, well, what if we just like undo the Missouri Compromise and have a vote out there for slavery, like
what if we just make it South?
Yeah. And just like, and have this big election. And that's why everyone poured in and all the chaos happens.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we can blame the railroads for this one.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow. Did not know that. So yeah, like you said, the abolitionists also sent people. Another incident that I think is kind of funny is you have literal senators like beating each other with sticks in Congress.
Yeah.
Senator Preston Brooks just fucking caned Charles Sumner with a walking cane on the Senate floor. There's a great drunk history episode about this that I really enjoyed. So, yeah.
I don't remember it very well, but it's a crazy story just in and of itself, man. Like, he just goes in there, dude's sitting at his desk, and he just goes to town. Like, the guy is severely injured. He's hospitalized.
Oh, yeah,
Charles
he almost
Sumner
dies.
Yeah. And then his Preston Brooks's constituents. His mailbag is just flooded with new canes that Southerners send him saying basically, anybody else talks about us like that, here's a cane,
Yeah, one of them is engraved with "Hit him again."
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
It's so bad. Apparently Sumner, obviously gave a very anti-slavery speech, which, was enough for him to get mad. But he also, talked shit about this dude's cousin or something, too, which is hilarious.
Andrew Butler or somebody, I think.
Yeah.
He wasn't there, but Preston Brooks was there, and he was like, fuck you.
I gotta fight you for my honor.
Yeah.
All this stuff Brown was, pretty upset about. Apparently, in response to someone trying to calm him down, when he heard about the caning, Brown said, "I'm eternally tired of hearing the word caution. It is nothing but the word of cowardice." Which, yeah.
Man.
I want Brown to talk to some libs these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, shit was getting pretty crazy in Kansas to the point where they had 2 different state capitals, 2 different constitutions, 2 different legislators. And, they would call each other we're the real government and you're the bullshit one. And I'll let you guess which sides the presidents Franklin Pierce and James Buchanan favored.
Well, considering they were both dough faces is what they called them.
What?
Northerners who basically were pro-slavery or sympathized with the
Oh my God.
with the Southern slavery cause. They were called dough faces.
That's a great burn.
And yeah, so they definitely sided with the pro-slavery side there.
Of course they did. Things escalate from there. You have something called the sacking of Lawrence, which is when some pro-slavery settlers, quote-unquote settlers, they did not live there, came into this town, destroyed a hotel, which, the hotel tried to kind of placate them with a really fancy meal. It was like, oh, come on in, just, sit down, please don't destroy us. And then they'd, destroy the hotel anyway. Thanks for the free food. Now let me set your hotel on fire.
Wow.
They destroyed newspaper offices of abolitionist papers and the home of the governor of the free version of the Kansas Territory. Shit was popping off, and Brown was like, well, I'm going to go help this pop off some more. So he gets in a wagon full of guns and ammo with 6 of his sons and a son-in-law. I guess he didn't have enough sons. And he started gathering forces to start fighting off these pro-slavery guys.
All right, John Brown and the boys
Going down
out
to Kansas.
I mean, that's really getting involved,
No, he does a lot of prep. He makes sure his family's set up and it's just all right, bye.
I may not come back, basically, that sort of setup.
So, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to remember, because at one point he does this later too, before his raid on Harper's Ferry, where he goes home for a sec just to see his family and then goes off to do some dangerous shit. So yeah, I mean, I think my guy was ready to die at any point.
Yeah, well, that's, supposed to be the Christian way to live, is you don't know if tomorrow's guaranteed.
That's a good point. All right, so they start off with just a straight up raid of some pro-slavery activists. May 24th, 1856. They had heard about the sacking of Lawrence and obviously were very upset about it. And so they go to the houses of 5 pro-slavery guys, take them prisoner, and kill them with swords.
Dude, yeah, this one's pretty badass. I mean, the sword touch is just, chef's kiss.
Yeah, that's classy.
How did you come up with that? Is that all they had? They didn't want to waste ammo? What was it,
Yeah, did they not want to be loud about it? Or are they just no, this is just poetically cool?
Stealth kill. It might make sense because, you don't want to get caught by, if they're in the pro-slavery part of town, you don't want to get surrounded by everybody come running because there was gunshots.
That was my guess, because they did a lot of hiding during this thing. They would go to one guy's house and, kill him and then go to the next one. So you probably don't want to be shooting off guns to let the next guy know, hey, there's guns happening.
Hide. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. I mean, when you're murdering, you
want to be a little secretive when you're murdering.
Yeah. Pro tip,
for your next murder spree. Okay, so that's something I want to talk about. In the research for this, there's some interesting angles taken in this, in how people tell this story.
Okay.
People and people at the time obviously were like, oh my God, this is a murder. Like, they call it the Potawatomi Massacre.
I've always said Potawatomi Massacre.
Could be Potawatomi, like a hippopotamus.
Because it sounds kind of, I don't know, sonorous that way.
That's
Potawatomi.
nice. Potawatomi, very rhythmic.
Yeah.
They call it a massacre, and guys, it's 5 guys. I don't know if it's a massacre.
The Boston Massacre was 5 guys.
That's a good point. Maybe we just like the word massacre too much.
It makes it sound more sensational. And in both cases, it was intentionally trying to agitate people. It was printed by the newspapers that way to gin up this look at the crazy abolitionists sort of thing. Just like in the Boston Massacre, it was look at these bloodthirsty redcoats.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely how a lot of the sources around this treat it. Like they're like, oh my gosh, this was a crazy thing to do, and like it's referred to as like terrorism, which I'm like, do we need to be throwing that word around? Like, these guys fucking sucked.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I've been desensitized to the word terrorism.
Oh yeah, me
to
too. At this point,
I'm like, is it even really? All right, Dave and Dan, is it even really bad? Like, sometimes terrorism.
Thoughts. Terrorism, good, bad?
And okay, I think that, a good distinction to draw is like just going after random innocent people.
And here's the thing. He didn't. I want to emphasize that. At one house, one of the guys had like a 16-year-old son, and his mom was there, and she was like, the son isn't even part of the party yet. Like, he hasn't joined. He hasn't done anything. They don't kill him.
He's racist as fuck, but he's not done anything.
Yeah, don't worry. He's plenty racist.
Yeah.
But he spares this kid. They go to a house with like extra guys there that they didn't expect, and they interrogate them, and then they let them go. So like, it's not a completely, like, he doesn't kill everybody in the house. He does not kill women, does not kill children, doesn't kill people who appear to not be like, guilty.
Yeah, like, I don't know. That to me doesn't really count. Like, if you're just, gonna bomb a building and you're like, well, it's regular civilians and old people and whatever die, but I got my thing done. Like, that's kind of bad, I think, generally.
Yeah, I think that's bad. I think we can agree.
And then you like, because it's a gradient, right? Because then you have like, oh, but then there's going to be this high value person who's killed so many people. We got to get him. And it's like, okay, well, that's like bad, but it's at least got something to do with it. And then you have like this where you're just killing a bunch of enemy like people. Like, okay, well, you guys did just like burn down a hotel. Like, we're essentially in an urban, I don't know, urban rural, but like
you're in guerrilla war.
Yeah, irregular warfare. It's just part of it.
These weren't good people, Like, I just want to emphasize that these were what were called border ruffians. They came in from Missouri to like start shit.
Yeah, to take part in an armed conflict.
Yeah, like their main target was a militant pro-slavery activist. Like, not a good guy.
Yeah. Now, when you flip it over and you say, okay, oh, the abolitionists, they're coming in, so can't somebody be sneaking around and kill 5 abolitionists? And
no, because those are the good guys.
Yeah, that's the thing, is you do have to like essentially take sides, and your liberal, your centrist sorts will say, oh, see, you're being hypocritical, but you're actually just having a set of values. Like, yeah,
one side is like pro-slavery. That's fine to get rid of those.
Yeah, when you're looking at history, it's not that the good guys are like saints. It's not what we're saying, but there usually are like sides that are better than other sides, Yes.
I think it's really interesting. Like, we'll get to it at the end too, just like some people's, readings of Brown. And this is often used as like an example of like, oh, he's just like bloodthirsty. I'm like, he clearly wasn't though. Like he would value civilian lives over like these other guys. All right, next we have the Battle of Blackjack, which is just a cool name for a battle.
That is, yeah. It was
they're just taking
fought
bets
over a disputed hand of blackjack, like in the old westerns.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, it was fought over some kidnapped sons. One of his many sons got kidnapped.
Whoa.
Yeah. So Henry Clay Pate, a participant in the sacking of Lawrence.
I'm sorry, he named one of his sons Henry Clay?
No. This is one of the bad guys. This is
Okay,
an
I was going to
asshole.
say, that's so odd choice. Henry Clay
Weird
was such a
choice for him.
compromiser.
No, this one's a pro-slavery fuck who like participated in like the attack on Lawrence. So not a good one. This motherfucker, he goes to Brown's home in Kansas and destroys his home and has 2 of his sons captured. Brown was like, hey, fuck that. And he takes 29 men to go kick his ass. He ends up capturing Pate and his men and agrees to release them in exchange for his sons. There's like a delay in the release, and I wasn't clear on like why, except like I guess a higher up told like Henry Clay Pate to do that, but like I don't know. Brown was very pissed, like, hey, what the fuck? I'll let you go. It took like a couple months to get his sons back.
Oh, wow. Asshole.
I know. Next, Osawatomie. August 30th, 1856, you have 300 assholes from Missouri, pro-slavery fucks, coming into Kansas to basically march on Topeka and Lawrence.
All right. They're just going to attack the place?
Yeah, they're just marching on fucking cities. In the process, they kill one of Brown's fucking sons, another son down, Frederick.
Damn.
So in response, Brown and his men attack from the road, and against like 300 people, you know, they are like kind of doing some guerrilla warfare shit. They take out 20 men and wound 40 more. But, I mean, because the numbers are so off, they end up kind of scattering and are defeated, and the company continues on to burn Osawatomie. So they didn't really win that one, but I mean, good try.
Yeah, I mean, a pretty good showing given the numbers. Is that, like, at that point, when you say they kind of retreat, do they scatter? Like, are they out of gas in the tank for the Kansas operation?
Almost. They make it to Lawrence to warn them and to start, preparing for another attack. But at this point, the governor steps in. Let me see, which governor was it? Because remember, they have Duke governors. Let's see. So yeah, they make it to Lawrence, and the governor there, the appointed one from the president, because he is like, you guys can't fucking pick a governor. I'll just do it for you, which also people did not like. This guy orders both parties to disband and offers like clemency to both sides. And so Brown actually is like, you know what? That's okay. And he leaves to head north.
Gets out of there while he can.
Yes. And the reason he goes north is because my guy needs some money because he's planning his fucking raid on Harper's Ferry.
All right. So at this point, he's decided it's all going to be this. Like, right? He's kind of changing from smaller local steps to getting involved in the national tumult. And now, I mean, this is the point at which he's going to start planning the raid at Harper's Ferry. Like, that's where he's really trying to foment, kind of like how, anarcho-syndicalists will say the general strike. This is the slave rebellion.
Yeah, so that is definitely it. Like, I feel like the other stuff was much more reactionary of like, oh, fuck, these guys are doing something, let me go attack them and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And this, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of documentation and there's a lot here about how he prepares, which makes me think like this took a minute. And apparently he never shared his full plan with anyone. So like we kind of have to piece together like what it was. And it's unclear exactly who came up with what at certain points because, he was so secretive and he had such a big network.
Interesting. That is impressive how conspiratorial it was that he didn't share, that nobody else knew the whole plan.
Yeah, I know. Because like it seemed like it was pretty detailed. So like, anyway, so he goes off to start fundraising. There's again, a lot of detail here that you don't super need to know. Just know that like he goes to Boston. There's a lot of merchants and abolitionists there, and he's getting money, he's getting guns, and he's getting ammo.
What is he telling them?
I mean, they're for the cause. They're all most of them are pretty famous abolitionists. There is a group called the Secret Six, which is like very mysterious sounding. These only 2 of them are like really rich in that group. The rest of them are just like some guys, like one of them's like a doctor, and back then doctors weren't that rich. And they were all just like abolitionists, but they wanted to keep their identities hidden because they're like, let's not show exactly that we're, funding a federal raid.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
But they knew they were funding a federal raid though.
It's unclear how much these guys knew.
Okay.
And that was, I think, kind of the point of like, I don't think wanted them, I think the Secret Six did not want to be implicated. So they just like gave him, I think they just gave him money, didn't ask questions, if I had to guess.
But they do know that they're giving it to John Brown, the sword guy from Kansas.
Yeah, if anything, they know that. Like, it's unclear. I mean, I didn't do a ton of like looking into it because I was just like, he got money, let's move on to the cool fighting stuff. But if you want to, there's lots of stories about him like traveling and talking to, I guess, rich people and getting money.
That's good. That's praxis.
Yeah, man. He's starting his network.
Let's put those ill-gotten gains to good use.
Yeah. He also continued networking in the personal sense of he attended an anti-slavery mock legislature. He gave speeches. He kept up his friendship with Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass knew about this mission and thought it was just like suicidal and was like, you should not be doing this, bro. Like, this is a bad idea, basically.
I guess he turns out right.
I mean, he's right about the fact that it's a suicide mission, but I still think it's very cool.
It's very cool. It also does, I don't think it has to fail, but it does fail.
Yes. And we'll talk about some of the reasons why. So this is the part where like this becomes such a bigger scheme because Brown goes to Canada and writes a provisional constitution for a new state in Appalachia.
Whoa, okay.
He's like, I'm not just doing a slave revolt. I'm starting a new fucking place.
Wow. So he writes the Constitution for it in Canada?
Yeah, I guess that's like a safer place to meet because you have a lot of like fugitive slaves there, or, you know, formerly enslaved people there. And you have a lot of abolitionists there. So he's like, we're going to hang out here to write our Constitution. He was very inspired by previous slave results like the one on La Amistad, as well as the revolts that were happening in the Caribbean, like Haiti, Jamaica, and Suriname. He was really interested in their use of guerrilla warfare and also the idea of establishing their own communities for runaway slaves. So, like, that was his idea, was basically like, this is going to be like a black-run state.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. He names Elder Monroe, who was a black minister, as the acting president. I mean, I like this detail. Has a unicameral legislature, all people chosen via popular vote, no Senate.
Nice.
It's just regular ass democracy.
Abolish the Senate.
Please.
Not enough, but I mean...
It's the literal least you could do at this point.
Yeah.
Bottom of the barrel. There was also a Declaration of Liberty, and the full title is the Declaration of Liberty by the Representatives of the Slave Population of the United States of America. So, like, really aiming big here.
Dude, yeah. And this is to kind of tie it into our normal topic. This was kind of the line of various American communist parties and like the Moscow International line back in like the 30s and early 20th century and stuff was self-determination for oppressed groups within the United States, like the black population. They wanted the liberation of the black belt into its own country. So this is just what it reminds me of, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Like, this is, and I don't know, like, this is going to be embarrassing. I'll just go ahead and say it. When I first heard about John Brown, I did assume he was black.
Oh, okay.
He's a white guy, but like, he's actually like doing the fucking work, you know, and he's like giving power to black people when he can. I don't know. I think it's very impressive how like he's willing to die for this cause or whatever, but he's not going to make himself president of this. He's like, I'll lead your troops because that's what I'm good at. Like, he names himself commander in chief, but not like president commander in chief. Like, he separates those roles.
Like, he's like military guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, they like establish all these different roles. Like, I think they name like a vice president, a secretary of war, secretary of peace, like all kinds of shit. They're like, here's our new government. The weird thing is, this was never really widely distributed. It sounds like the people who were like working on it knew the plan, knew their part of the plan, but he doesn't like go off talking about this because he doesn't want people to find out about, you know, the big raid.
Yeah, he's sort of planning a rebellion against the government. Yeah,
you can't really go chatting about that.
Yeah.
And even though they were very careful, they still had a security leak issue. A former military consultant for Brown, Hugh Forbes, threatened to expose his plan to the Senate.
Ooh.
Yeah. So Brown's benefactors, the Secret Six, were like, we can't have our money tied to a federal raid. Please, shut this down.
Mm-hmm.
So Brown actually flees to Kansas for 6 months. He's like, see, I'm just going back to Kansas. No big deal. But of course, he doesn't just go chill. He does do some more raids in Missouri. And he helps lead a group of liberated slaves escape to Canada. Just some downtime fun.
Yeah. Casual law breaking
stuff. Yeah. He ends up getting a bounty on his head from the governor, equivalent to $105,000 today for Brown's capture.
Yeah. In D&D, that's how you know you're making a name for yourself. So I imagine it's the same if you're doing anti-slavery activism.
I want to point out again here that Brown was not particularly bloodthirsty. Apparently at one point, one of his companions suggested whoa, we should just start blowing up churches in the South. And he was like, yeah, we're not going to do that.
Wow.
Yeah. So not a terrorist again.
Oh no, he's doing massacres.
Whatever. They were jerks. Brown starts wrapping up and making final prep for the raid. He goes and visits his family one more time. He sets up in Maryland, which is very close to Virginia, obviously. Mm-hmm. And there he's joined by Harriet Tubman. He called her General Tubman, which I think is cool.
Oh, badass.
Yeah. She actually helped with this raid. She helped him recruit former slaves from Canada and gather resources in nearby border states. She didn't want to participate much more than that because she was like, if this goes south, I still have to make sure that the Underground Railroad is working. So she couldn't commit much more than that.
Okay, all right. For some reason, I thought that she had gotten ill or something and was gonna, but then couldn't. But that makes more sense, I guess.
That's what I had read. Maybe there's another source on that.
No, either way works. I don't know. Whichever one of them's right, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure she had a reason. The plan was to capture an armory in Harper's Ferry, which is a federal building where they stored all the guns, basically. And they wanted to arm the local slaves in the town and also work their way south, freeing and arming slaves from plantations as they go by. They plan to fight only in self-defense. So, if you come at me, I'll shoot you. But if you just let me do this, I won't.
Yeah.
And he hoped this would basically spread a wave of rebellions, hoping for a mass movement and to basically topple the slave economy from the inside out.
Okay, so kind of a flavor of propaganda of the deed.
I think so. I think showing if we take a federal armory and then we start arming people, that will inspire more people to follow. So the good news is he had a lot of guns. All that fundraising paid off. He has 200 rifles, 950 pikes, and the armory that they were planning to capture had 10,000 rifles. So he if they could get in there, they were good on guns.
Well, yeah, they'll be good on guns. How many people do they have?
That's the bad news because he was hoping to pull this off. He wanted a brigade of 4,500 men.
To start with?
That's what he wanted.
Okay.
He had 21.
Yeah, not a lot, but that's
a little short.
It's a starting point. Once you liberate your first plantation, you get a whole lot more people.
That's the idea, I guess. It was made up of 16 white men, 3 free black men, 1 freed slave, and 1 fugitive slave. One of the slaves, I wasn't clear on whether or not it was the totally freed one or the fugitive. I think the fugitive, because he was on a mission to free his wife because she thought she was going to be sold off because her owner had money troubles. And it's really sad. This guy ends up dying and they find this note from his wife in his pocket.
Oh.
I know. October 16th, 1859. Also, again, this guy's 59 years old.
And he's out there at a time when 59 was not the new 39,
No, that was old as fuck back then. Yeah. So, yeah, they attack the armory. They meet no resistance at first. There was a single guy guarding it, and he was just yeah, fuck no, I'm out of here. They cut the telegraph wires. and they round up hostages from nearby farms, including one Colonel Washington, the great grandnephew of George Washington.
Okay.
They take this guy's slaves. They also steal some shit from him. They take a sword that was presented to Washington by Frederick the Great and 2 pistols from Lafayette.
Nice. They just rob him?
They just rob him. They also take a silver watch.
He was a slave owner then?
He was a slave owner.
Okay.
Yeah. During Brown's interrogation later, they ask him, did you rob this guy? And he says, we intended freely to appropriate the property of slaveholders to carry out our object, with no design to enrich ourselves with any plunder whatsoever. So, like, yes, we did rob him. It wasn't for me. Whatever. He doesn't deserve to have it.
It wasn't like to get rich. Yeah. You know, in other times, he would have said property is theft.
Exactly. Next, we get to the story of Hayward Shepherd. So while they're working on their takeover, they end up being confronted by a black man working as a baggage handler at the train station. This was a free black man, and he gets killed. And this is something that the South really harps on, of the first death was a black guy.
Of course they do.
It gets so much worse. The United Daughters of the Confederacy end up erecting a monument to this guy in 1931. And it was all just fucking bullshit, faithful slave narrative nonsense.
Yeah, they suck.
It was so gross. Like, I included the quote from the plaque in the notes if you want to read it. It's disgusting. It's just like, oh, wow, what a good character. Wow. They were so happy being slaves.
Yep. I mean, it sucks that the guy died, but it's not like he was, saying, I really hope that we keep slavery. I'm going to fight to the death, right? Like, how did he die?
He thought they were robbers. Like, he had no idea they were, like, on an anti-slavery crusade. He just was like, hey, don't rob this train station, please.
Yeah. And then one of the troops was just like, blam. Oh, damn.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. So a doctor comes out to see, like, hey, so I just heard a gunshot. And Brown lets him go, which, again, not bloodthirsty, but also maybe not smart, because the guy just goes to, like, ring the church bell to sound the alarm and heads off for a nearby town to get help.
Well, probably should have shot that guy. Or tied him up, knocked him out, tied him up. Something.
I always make this joke when we play D&D is kill your prisoners. No, I made that joke on the pod. It was for, who was it?
Snowpiercer,
kill your prisoners. Sometimes you might have to. I don't know. Not my favorite activity.
It's a hard decision to make, but at least debility.
Tie him up.
You said it was a doctor, yeah.
Just like doctor.
Tie him up, put him in his house.
Yeah, some Scooby-Doo fucking rope around him. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Brown continues to make some bad decisions because things really start to break bad when a train comes into town. This is at like 1:15 in the morning. They had been warned about trouble and stopped a little bit outside of town. Brown gets on the train, not hiding his identity at all. Remember, this guy has been doing raids all the fuck around the country and is, like, pretty famous for it. So he just, like, chats with the passengers. The train is delayed, and he gives them blankets. He's like, oh, you guys are cold in here. Let me just hook you up. He lets them stay in the hotel for the night. Like, oh, you're delayed? Let me accommodate you.
Oh, wow.
And then he lets the fucking train go.
What do you mean? He just sends them on, like,
yeah,
keep going?
At dawn, he lets them go. And of course, the train immediately goes to send a fucking telegram in the next town in Baltimore. And apparently whoever received the telegram thought that the report was exaggerated. Like, this cannot be real. What the fuck are you talking about? But then another train station, like, in Virginia confirms it. So he's like, oh, shit, okay.
Yeah.
So they then send telegrams to the military, the governor of Virginia, the Secretary of War, and President Buchanan.
See, it's a pretty good tactic once you've succeeded. Like, once you have carved out your little area, be nice, and say, look at us. Like, you thought we were going to be bloodthirsty, crazy people or whatever, but we're actually, like, a really respectable place.
But don't let them go.
Well, I mean, not right then. Let them go and don't take prisoners and be good once you have your state. But, like, at that time, probably too soon, right?
Yeah, I mean, just keep them in the fucking hotel. Like, why do you have to let the train go? They're just going to go rat you out.
Yeah, or just blow up the tracks.
Yeah, yeah. So Brown does consider this his one mistake. I gotta agree with that. Yeah, that was not a good one.
Pretty big one.
Pretty big one to have.
But they also don't, they have trouble getting the word out to the local slave population, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, the big issue with this plan is the numbers did not materialize for him, both in his initial recruits, there just were not enough, and then, yeah, whenever they start freeing people, like, they don't get enough numbers there either.
Yeah. Was it just like they couldn't get out to them, or they had dispersed in some other way, or?
It was mostly, yeah, that they couldn't really end up leaving. Harper's Ferry is situated on a very narrow peninsula, so they get pretty quickly trapped in there once offenses start showing up. Mm-hmm. They just, like, are stuck with whatever hostages they have.
Yeah, they had a very narrow window of time to go out as far as they can, get as many slaves as they can, and instead they were passing out blankets.
I mean, yeah, maybe you shouldn't have used your 5 hours on train time. Like, train chats.
So that was a pretty crucial mistake. I would say that's just as bad as the railroad part, because, like, yeah, getting everyone there to close you off is bad also, but you have 21 guys.
You shouldn't have gone, first off. If you only had 21 guys and you wanted 4,000, you should not have gone.
Well, I like it, so...
I mean, it's cool.
Go do it, but, like, your priority number one mission has to be...
Get more guys.
Get people, yeah. Like, you got to do that.
Yeah, I mean, they got some, like, from fucking Washington's farm and, like, a couple of other areas, but, like, that was about it. Like, I don't think they got a ton.
Yeah, they had to put all their efforts, I think, to that, to get it to work. I think it was possible, but I guess I haven't looked at, like, a map to say, okay, well, how many literal people even were there for them to get on board, you know, in a feasible area.
Yeah, like, how far apart were these farms and shit?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, could you have done any of that beforehand, you know, done small sneaky attacks on the farms and make sure they don't fucking tell anybody, and then have those people added to your initial force? Like, that would be cool.
Yeah, that's more like guerrilla action of, like, I don't know, kind of National Liberation Front stuff from Vietnam and stuff. I have kind of secret cadres going through, you know, and recruiting, and then when the day comes, bam, you thought you had a secure plantation, but actually all your workforce is actually turned against you now. And they knew it was coming, and it's all coordinated. That'd be cool.
Yeah, see, I'd be into that. They end up getting some more hostages. People come in for work at the armory, and I'm like, wait, didn't that doctor set off alarm bells? So, like, I don't know if they just didn't hear it, or they're like, church is early today. Like, I don't fucking know. So he takes these employees as hostages in the engine house of the armory. There are different reports on how many exactly there were, somewhere between 60, 70, 80, something like that. It's very hard to tell because some people, like, thought the hostages were with Brown, so, like, it was unclear. Since Brown had taken the armory, the citizens of the town didn't have any guns to fight back. But by this point, it was the next morning, militias from the neighboring towns began to arrive. Apparently, a lot of them were just drunk. They were just, like, a mob of racist assholes who were, like, bad at shooting. So, like, they weren't very effective for a while.
I'm sure they probably had, I mean, this was America in the 1850s. Like, there were townsfolk with guns and stuff. And, yeah, everyone was drunk. But, I mean, some of the, you know, they had enough to, like, surround them in the first place, right? Like, the local militia.
Yeah, you might have your own personal shotgun, but that was not going to, like, breach a fucking, you know, engine house. Like, your big guns were in the armory.
Yeah, they have enough to draw up a position, but they don't really have enough to do anything with it.
So, yeah, he's basically trapped in there. They lost control of the bridges outside of town that, like, they had been, like, patrolling. So they all fall back to, like, the main fire engine house in the armory. They bar the doors and the windows and just, like, leave little holes for them to poke their guns out of. They start shooting. You've got 4 townspeople killed, including the mayor. He was also the former sheriff of the county, so he probably sucked. So that's fine. And Brown sends out his son, Watson. son number, whoever, I don't even know, and another man to surrender. These guys are just shot. Like,
Out of hand, they were just blam.
yeah, they shoot Watson, and the other man is captured. Watson is like gravely wounded and begs for death, and his dad is like, "Suck it up, dude." Like, which is pretty shitty. Another son, Oliver Brown, also dies. Another son escapes. I think he was actually left behind in Maryland guarding their base. He left like 3 guys behind to guard. So yeah, this next section's a little gross. So content warning for just like wanton violence. I'm not going to get too much into the details here, but like, if you want an idea of the kinds of guys they were fighting, they at one point find one of their guys posted on the bridge, one of Brown's men, William Thompson. He is shot and taken to the hotel, and then the mob drags him out and throws him into the river because the hotel owner said he didn't want his carpet ruined.
By his, like, dead body?
Yeah. He said, take that guy out of here.
Well, it is a dead body.
I mean, I guess.
Not to side with hotel owners, because they suck. I mean, they're a business. It's not like uniquely bad. It's just a hotel.
Yeah, yeah. In general, just the bodies of these men were treated very badly. People were cutting off body parts to take as souvenirs. Afterwards, Watson's body was turned into an anatomical specimen, basically for the explicit purpose of like saying a big fuck you to abolitionists. 3 other bodies were also used by medical students. Like, this is just what they did. Other bodies were dumped in an unmarked pit because no cemeteries around there would take them.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Pretty mean. I mean, I'm not a big
I don't care. I want to be like
person.
Yeah. I just want to be like a tree or something. I want to be a tree, but I'm worried I'm going to get chopped down.
Oh, well, you won't care.
I mean, yeah, you're right. You're definitely right. Here's my thing. Worry about being chopped down, and also like, I'm worried about like my poor, as Helmut said, ancestors, opposite descendants. They're gonna be like, we can't move because we got fucking grandma tree over here. What are we gonna do?
Yeah, that's true. You can get planted in a national or state park or something.
Now that's a good scheme.
You're like protected.
For now.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, I don't know.
Oh, they can launch you into space, can't they?
I guess, yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of money.
Yeah. It does suck, though, for their relatives and stuff who, that sucks.
Now you gotta take care of a tree.
About that. No, not the tree thing. I mean, if they did the anatomical thing.
Yes.
If they disrespect your
body.
Yeah, your fallen relative's body, and then you're like,
It's just rude. It's gross. It's rude. Just don't. The next day, you get the big guns. President Buchanan sends in the Marines to deal with these, again, not very many guys. Start with 22 men. He sends in 105 Marines, plus a bugler, which I think is funny, armed with 7 howitzers.
Well, they are holed up in a building.
They are. They do have a lot of guns.
This is pretty normal. I don't know. It's not the military's like MO to be like, oh, there's 6 guys out there. We're going to send
7.
6 guys. Yeah.
Just an extra guy. A bugler. Don't forget the bugler.
They try to overwhelm. It's fairly standard.
Yeah. And he sends one Robert E. Lee to lead the forces.
Boo.
Yeah, I guess sucks. Tuesday, 6:30 a.m., Lee starts his attack. He apparently offers this job to the local militias, but they decline. And I'm like, are they just too drunk? Or are they just like, nah, you should do it? Like, I don't know. It's just funny to me.
I mean, he was the top general.
He's a professional. I can leave it to him.
I mean, I guess he's only a colonel at the time, but he's still like West Point. He like, knows what he's fucking doing. And these are the Marines. What does a fucking militia know about commanding, U.S. troops?
Do you want to try this? No, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Like you said, they're also still hungover or drunk.
All right, so Lee sends in a guy to offer surrender, and Brown's like, no, we're not doing that. And so the man who was there, to offer the surrender immediately signals for people to attack. So they try to break through with sledgehammers, and then they end up making a makeshift battering ram out of a ladder, which I'm like, I would think the sledgehammer would be stronger, but okay.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
The ladder works, so they make it through. 2 of Brown's men are killed and the rest are taken prisoner. The hostages are freed. This all goes down in like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Like it's over very quickly.
It falls apart.
Brown started this attack with 22 men. 10 were killed, and 7 of them are captured and hanged,
Including
Brown. Yes. On the other side, they killed 5 people and injured 9.
So let me guess. This was a gruesome, barbaric attack by crazed abolitionists.
Yeah, they killed 5 whole people. So yeah, now we get into the aftermath of it, which is pretty interesting. So they take everyone to like a nearby office, and Brown gives interviews all day, despite like having had no food or sleep in 2 days and having like major injuries.
He got wounded too.
Yeah, he got wounded. He gets like a big head wound and I think a shoulder wound and somewhere like in his kidneys too. He some guy like hits him with a sword a few times.
Damn.
So he's questioned by all kinds of like famous or big shots. You got the Virginia governor and his attorney, the U.S. attorney from D.C. You have congressmen from Virginia and Ohio. So you have all these guys. And what's really interesting about this set of interviews is that everyone is like reluctantly impressed by this guy. They're like, man, I hate what this fucking guy did, but they call him things like courteous, brave, resolute. Quote, the farthest possible remove from the ordinary ruffian, fanatic, or madman.
Wow.
They're like, this guy isn't crazy.
Yeah. And they went in expecting it, right? They went in like, oh, this guy's got to have blood in his eyes all the time,
I think so. Like, it's what's weird is they like don't think that he planned the attack himself. They're like, I don't think he thought this through, or like maybe someone else hired him to do this, or like he was part of a larger operation. Of course, Brown ain't talking to fucking cops. He did not tell them, he did not reveal anybody. So he didn't give him any of like the Secret Six, any sort of funding people, anyone else that was involved. Like they ask him all kinds of questions. There's actually a newspaper interview from the time, like they just like let reporters in here and they publish like pretty much verbatim the interview. Well, at least as far as I know. I don't know for sure. I guess they could have changed shit. But it's really interesting. Like he just is like very calm in his answers, and he's just like, I'm not going to answer that. Or like, no, I'm not going to. Like at one point they ask him about like some name of like, is so-and-so involved. And he goes, well, I can't speak for other people and I'm not going to answer that. So I'll tell you what I did.
Yeah. He's very calm, cool, and collected for after what he's been through.
Yeah. I mean, he basically is just like, I had to do this, and like tells them, you're going to have to deal with this more. Like, this ain't going to be the last of this conflict.
Yeah. And it's an interesting place to be, I guess, because he kind of has to know how this is, what's going to happen to him at that point, His state
of mind in the time period after being captured is very interesting. We'll talk a little bit about that in a sec. But and then they were transferred to the jail, and things really heat up. They basically put up martial law in Charlestown, not to be confused with Charleston or Charlestown. It's 2 separate words. And they just like have a heavy military presence here. They were really worried about people trying to break John out, and they were worried about any sort of retaliation. So yeah, very heavily monitored.
Yeah, Charlestown is now in West Virginia. At the time, though, that is Virginia, because there was no West Virginia before the Civil War.
Oh yeah, doesn't West Virginia exist because they're like, yeah, we're not going to secede?
Well, yeah, kind of. Virginia had already seceded and joined the Confederacy, and it's during the Civil War that western region was like, hey, fuck this, we're going to break away and like basically rejoin, the Union.
Good job, West Virginia.
Yeah.
All right, next we get to the trial, which like mixed bag of issues here. So
it's like a show trial, isn't it?
It is in a lot of ways, yes. The attack was on federal property, but they did not want to try him federally because they're like, we want to win, so we're going to try him in Virginia. their argument was like, well, murder and slave insurrection is not a federal crime, so we're gonna like do it here. But they really just like didn't want to attract any more abolitionist protesters from around the country to like come see a trial in DC. It was heavily reported on as like one of the first like nationally covered trials. You had people from New York and Baltimore and like all around coming in. Apparently a pro-slavery paper came in disguise, like a reporter from there. A guy recognized him and he's like, hey, please don't like rat me out. And he's like, okay. And he would like use this guy to smuggle out like reports by like wrapping them around his legs and like tying them underneath his pant legs.
Wow.
Yeah, some spy shit.
Yeah.
They really like rushed this whole trial and sentencing process because they're like, we just need to get this guy killed, basically. He's tried by a grand jury for 4 counts of murder, inciting a slave insurrection, and treason against the Commonwealth of Virginia. I did not realize treason was per state, which, okay. I mean, I know there's federal treason, but apparently it can do it per state, too.
I guess so. You can... You know, if someone tries to rebel against the state government, wouldn't that count?
I guess.
Someone's like, look, I'm going to set up, you know,
No
this
more
county's
Texas.
breaking away. And like,
I'm starting new Texas.
It makes sense. I think that could technically be a thing.
It just seems just very strange. And I was curious because, spoiler, Brown ends up being the first person executed for treason. I looked it up, and a lot of the treason that's in like the historical record is on a state level. So I just think that's interesting. I mean, maybe it's just like a product of the times.
I mean, so what? The state is there to defend the interests of capital, to persecute their class enemies. So treason is just, you know, another way to increase the criminal penalties for whatever they did that you don't like, you know, whatever they did to threaten your position. You're like, oh, yeah, that's also treason. We're going to execute you, you know?
Yeah, I guess I'm just surprised that it comes in like at a state, as in like individual states level.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just like, why are we? Okay, whatever. Anyway, so yeah, some shit happens. First off, Brown was assigned 2 pro-slavery lawyers for his defense. And he was like, yeah, this isn't going to work. Can we please delay so my lawyer can get here? And they're like, no.
Nice.
He also was still healing from his injuries and wanted to delay for that reason. And they said, absolutely not. They had a doctor come in and say, oh, yeah, he's totally fine, even though he still had a lingering head wound.
He'll be all right.
He also like couldn't hear very well because of the head wound. And they're like, oh, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. He's totally good to go.
This is not a real trial anyway, so
Yeah,
you're good.
You don't really need to hear anything. So his lawyers eventually make it a day later. The prosecuting attorney in Virginia for that county was apparently like kind of drunk and incompetent. So the governor appoints his own personal attorney, who of course was like very pro-slavery. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure the other guy was too. But
I'm sure he just also like was a bad lawyer.
yeah.
Brown refuses to take an insanity defense, you know, kind of plea thing. He's his family and friends are like, yeah, maybe you should consider that. His lawyer tries to get him to do it, but he's like, nope, not going to do it. His lawyer does try some interesting moves to try to reduce the charges. He says that, you know, because it happened on federal property, again, like, why are we doing this for Virginia? You also can't get him for anything he did in Maryland because that's not Virginia. Also, Brown isn't even a resident of the state, so like he couldn't commit treason. Which I think these are interesting moves, but none of them work.
They already know what they want to do.
I mean, they really do. And to top it off, under Virginia law, defendants are not allowed to testify under the assumption that they will not tell the truth.
Well, that's not a bad assumption. Like,
I mean,
no one's
I
going to
get
go
it.
up there and be like, yeah,
I totally did it.
Yeah, I sort of shot that guy. You know, like, and then if they are innocent, they'll tell you the truth, sure. But you're just always going to get the same story as I didn't do it.
It's like the 2 angels.
Yeah.
One always tells the truth. One lives in Virginia. Which one is lying? So yeah, I mean, that law is no longer on the books, but yeah, pretty funny. So yeah, October 31st, the jury deliberates for a whopping 45 minutes. They find Brown guilty on all charges. And 2 days later, Brown is allowed to speak at his sentencing. It's a pretty short speech, so feel free to read it. But I pulled out a couple of quotes that I enjoyed. Had I so interfered on behalf of the rich, the powerful, the intelligent, the so-called great, or on behalf of any of their friends, either father, mother, brother, sister, wife, or children, or any of that class, and suffered and sacrificed what I have in this interference, it would have been all right. Every man in this court would have deemed it an act worthy of reward rather than punishment.
Yes.
My man understands class division.
Mm-hmm. He gets it. He understands what they're really punishing him for is challenging the state and its regime.
Yeah. Now, if it is deemed necessary that I should forfeit my life for the furtherance of the ends of justice and mingle my blood further with the blood of my children and with the blood of millions in this slave country whose rights are disregarded by wicked, cruel, and unjust enactments, I submit. So let it be done.
Nice. It's like how you said he was kind of calm about everything. I mean, he knows where the road's going.
Yeah. It seems like he's very aware of what's going on. And that's why I don't buy the, like, he was crazy. I'm like, no, this guy knew what's up. He has some time on his hands because under Virginia law, you have to wait 1 month between sentencing and execution. Sounds like a terrible month to be in.
I guess that's like to make it worse, you know? Like,
you'd think so, right?
You have to think about being about to die sort of thing.
Yeah.
The extra punishment.
I have to assume. Maybe it's like, I don't know, to give time, like, oh, I found some evidence. I don't know.
Or to get your affairs in order. Like, you have to
make a funeral
write a
arrangement.
will or, yeah.
Yeah.
Say goodbye to your loved ones.
Yeah. I mean, this has a couple of effects. One, it extends the reporting, like the news cycle of it. This is really sensationalized. In the meantime, the rest of his men are tried and found guilty. Brown's lawyers and some other like reporters and such were basically run out of town. The mayor gives a proclamation telling all strangers to leave the town or they'll be arrested. It's kind of good they left because there was also like a lynch mob coming for them. So like, it was probably good to just go ahead and leave.
The tourism board really wasn't a fan of that proclamation.
Yeah, come on, guys.
The hotels are just like, seriously, all strangers? Come on.
Someone just has like a relative visiting.
Yeah.
Like, no, I can vouch for him. I know who this is.
Yeah.
They were also, again, really worried about a rescue attempt. There were a few, like, failed ideas on how to do that. There was one plot to kidnap the governor and hold him hostage in exchange for Brown. Brown, like, heavily discouraged any of these attempts. He's like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm ready to die. It's cool. So, yeah. Brown passed the time by writing letters. He wrote over like 100 letters from prison. He gave interviews to reporters. He was just like, well, I'm about to die. Let me go ahead and like spread the word about why I'm doing this. He was weirdly cheerful, in fact. Like, this is the only evidence I see of like, okay, this is a little like not crazy, but it's, I don't know, maybe he's zen. Maybe he just like had made his fucking peace. You know, maybe it's not crazy.
And he knows where he's going. You know, he knows that he's fulfilling his mission. He knows that he's living righteously. He's acted and not just believed. I mean, he's kind of closing. You know, it's like the feeling you get when you've read like an 8-book series, and you're on like near the end of the book, and you're just like, oh, here it comes, you know. And it's like kind of it's conclusive and good, and that's where he's at. It's
satisfactory. Yeah. Closure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's getting a ton of letters of support, and, you know, I think he just feels like he's dying for the cause, and it's like, that's fine. It's a good cause, you know. The one thing I think that kind of haunted him a bit was his wife. He didn't want her to visit because he's like, that's just going to like upset both of us a lot. And also she'll be like hounded by reporters. So he tried to tell her not to come. She came anyway, which like, I get it. They have their last meal together in the home of his jailer, who Brown basically saw as a friend at that point. Like, they seemed like kind of weirdly close. In fact, he gives his last words to his jailer. He writes it down on a scrap of paper. He writes, Charlestown, Virginia, 2nd December, 1859. I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away, but with blood. I had, as I now think, vainly flattered myself that without very much bloodshed, it might be done.
Well, he was right.
He's not wrong.
Yeah.
Not wrong at all. Brown is hanged on December 2nd, 1859 at 11:15 a.m. I want to reiterate that this man, someone who tried to free slaves, was the first person to be executed for treason in the United States.
That's a fitting first treason execution.
Yeah, I mean, for a country founded on slavery, like, it fucking tracks.
Yeah. For this slave country, as he called it, right? Like, exactly what they do. And at that point, even, it's like caricaturishly pro-slavery, like the government and everything is completely captured by pro-slavery forces. Before then, it was always pro-slavery, but it was like at least they had qualms about it,
The execution itself is pretty rough. There are like a ton of spectators, including the press. You have a lot of pro-slavery fucks just there to like watch the show. They ask the carpenter who made his coffin if they could have a piece of the board. The rope was like specifically made out of like Virginia cotton and afterwards was displayed in the fucking sheriff's office. The day before the execution, there was a military parade complete with music.
Oh yeah. I mean, this was a triumph for the South. This is what the abolitionist road leads to, and this is how we will stop it.
Yeah, it was a fucking party. You had some famous folks in attendance, including Robert E. Lee, of course. Stonewall Jackson, he did not have the cool nickname yet, just regular Jackson.
Just Thomas.
Is that his name? I forgot it already.
Yeah, it was Thomas Jackson.
Okay. John Wilkes Booth showed up, and Edmund Ruffin, who is credited with firing the first shot of the Civil War.
Edmund, man.
Way to go. Really started some shit, didn't ya?
He was just following orders, to be honest.
Yeah.
But he was on the wrong side, so...
I mean, he still sucked, don't get me wrong. In fact, in order to gain entrance, some people, like, put on a borrowed militia uniform so they could, like, go watch this hanging.
That's an awkward ask.
Hey, man, I can't get in.
Uniform?
Do you have a spare ticket? I mean, uniform?
So I can go watch a hanging. That used to be public entertainment, I guess.
It really did, yeah. That is kind of the standard, but...
People were more gruesome.
Very gross. There's like a very famous legend, and it's captured in a lot of paintings and engravings of stuff, of Brown kissing a black baby on his way to the gallows. This is widely refuted. He was basically surrounded by soldiers the entire time. They were really worried about him giving another speech, so the crowd was kept pretty far away from the actual gallows.
I always liked that painting, though. It was cool.
It's a cool painting. Don't get me. There's a lot of cool paintings of this guy. Like, first off, his beard is crazy. He grew the beard specifically when he started, like, doing some direct action. He was like, well, now I need a disguise. So,
Yeah.
And it looks great. Great choice. So, yeah, they basically had to, like, do some martial law to keep out any more spectators. And they also had a shotgun pointed at Brown in case of a last-minute rescue attempt. They had one set up, like, at the gallows.
Damn.
And now we get kind of to the immediate reaction and impact. As we talked about with the story of Hayward Shepherd, the South took this and ran with the idea of the content slave. They said, well, nobody wanted to join, so clearly they love being slaves. They super exaggerated it, though, and said that, like, no black people helped Brown. This is not true, obviously. He had black people with him going in. And during the raid, he had about 20 to 30 people, like, freed slaves that he just liberated help him. The numbers are kind of shaky because when they were captured, obviously they weren't going to admit that they, like, ran away. So they said they were, like, involuntarily conscripted.
Oh, yeah. I mean, makes sense. That's
fair enough.
It's a smarter story to tell.
For sure. And not only that, but leading up to Brown's trial, there were about 589 escaped slaves in the county, and coincidentally, several fires were set at the farms of the jury members who convicted Brown. I believe every single jury member actually got their barn set on fire.
Wonder how that happened.
Yeah.
Just crazy lightning strikes.
Super weird.
Maybe it was. God was like, you should not have done that.
You guys suck. In the North, you had abolitionists putting on all kinds of things for Brown: prayers, services, marches, flags were flown at half-mast. They also raised money to support the remains of Brown's family. And, you know, Brown was basically seen as a martyr.
In, you know, particularly abolitionist communities, though, right? Like,
yes, definitely.
because there were, my understanding in the North, like the more mainstream political opinion was not really pro John Brown at all.
Definitely, because, okay, so the Senate, they appoint a bipartisan committee to investigate this raid, and their goal was to uncover who was funding it, which they did not succeed at. But yeah, you're right. The North basically distanced themselves from Brown. Lincoln called Brown insane, and they just were like, yeah, that ain't us. Like, that was way too far.
Yeah. Like, oh, we want to, you know, limit the expansion of slavery, but we don't agree with those tactics, you know? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Some other kind of legacy points, you know, again, even if it didn't have the immediate effect that Brown wanted, it was obviously a major event leading to the Civil War. It's probably one of the last big major events. Of course, we also know it from the popular Union marching song, John Brown's Body, which has been stuck in my head all fucking week. But at least it's a good bop.
Yeah.
Harriet Tubman, friend of Brown, at one point said that Brown did more for American blacks than Lincoln did.
Damn.
Pretty good recommendation.
I mean, you know, Lincoln doesn't get to that point. Lincoln kind of just tries to hold it all together, just tries to mollify the South if the Civil War doesn't kick off. And the Civil War is, you know, is maybe even delayed to the other side of his presidency if John Brown doesn't catalyze it, you know, or maybe Lincoln doesn't even get elected, you know, if John Brown's execution doesn't polarize the nation even further.
I think that's a great point. Like, this definitely drew the line for a lot of people. I know we were talking about how, like, some people in the North were very wishy-washy on it, but, like, this really rallied the cause for both sides. You know, they both took this and ran with it. Another cool recommendation, or cool shout-out, is from Malcolm X. He had an organization called the Organization of Afro-American Unity, which did not allow white people in it, but he said he would make one exception, saying, quote, if John Brown were still alive, we might accept him.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty cool. All right, so this is the section that I want to talk about, kind of the historical reaction to Brown. And this is what I think is really interesting. Until about 1890, so the immediate aftermath. If you remember those, like, newspaper interviews and all the interrogations from, you know, the governor and shit like that, historians generally considered Brown to be sane. They said, this wasn't a good plan, but, like, he's not crazy. He just is bad at planning.
He was radical, maybe, or he was extreme, but he knew what he was doing, is what you're saying?
Yeah, everyone said he was lucid. He was, you know, smart even. Like, they thought he was just, like, a guy who had different ideas than them. When you get to 1890 to around 1970, that's when the narrative switches. He starts being portrayed as crazy. And 1890, I mean, that's when the Civil War is done. That's when you get a reactionary movement.
Yeah, that's when, Reconstruction by that point is over for almost 20 years. That time period is called like the nadir of American race relations. Like black people are just getting wrung completely. Like they're getting squashed.
They're getting lynched.
Yeah. Like it's a complete rollback. This is when you have the depths of the Jim Crow South and the segregation in northern cities as well. So it kind of makes sense that, you know, along with all the lost cause historiography, along with all the stuff that's just basically saying like, oh, the South, you know, they fought a noble fight for states' rights or whatever. Like, along with all that, you have John Brown, man, crazy guy.
One guy, Oswald Garrison Villard, does some particular damage, writing a biography in 1910, which basically portrayed him as a homicidal, crazy person. He's like, yeah, this guy was fucking nuts. Loved to kill.
Is that where they started the idea of like that he heard the voice of God and all this?
So I wasn't able to find a source for that. I mean, I saw like in his kind of basic bio stuff about how he considered himself an agent of God, but I didn't see anything specifically about him like hearing voices and stuff.
Could be something that I added to it that I thought sounded cool.
I don't know. I mean, I totally am open to more sources on that. I didn't spend a ton of time on that angle. I just like did a quick search on it, and I couldn't find much except just saying like, yeah, he was Calvinist and he like really liked God. And like he thought he was on a mission from God, but they didn't go into detail of him like hearing voices or like trying to do like magic stunts or anything.
Okay, all right. So he was just Blues Brothers style on a mission from God.
Essentially, yes.
Okay, got it.
Got it. And then some slightly more recent ones. Paul Finkelman, a historian specializing in slavery studies, has compared Brown to terrorists like Osama bin Laden and Timothy McVeigh.
See, I think again, the difference is who were his targets, you know?
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with the state calling revolutionary movements terrorists. I mean, you know, call us what you're going to call us. Like, it's
whatever.
It's fine. They will call you...
They're going to call you some shit.
Yeah, they will call any group that goes up against the cops or up against the military or anything. They'll call them terror. I mean, because like he does, you know, attack American troops in the raid on Harper's Ferry. Yeah, that does happen, you know.
But like, what were those American troops defending? Fucking slavery.
Yeah, but you know, that's the thing is they didn't see that as a crime. They didn't see that was the law of the land. And these liberals will say, oh, it was bad, but you should have, you know, worked through legal means to change it. Yeah. And when you step outside of those bounds, then you cross over into terrorism and whatnot. And it's like, I don't know, maybe it's just a definitional thing. And we're thinking of terrorism as like, oh, let's attack innocent people. Evil. But they're saying terrorism is anything that, you know, actively, you know, does combat against the state.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too, because I had thought a lot of the definition of terrorism was bound up in that it's, you know, it is fear based. You're trying to strike fear into people. And I could kind of see that maybe for like when he goes and like kills a bunch of people with swords, but like, fuck it. Like people who are pro-slavery should be scared. Like, I don't care about scaring them. But yes, please. If I can scare you out of owning slaves, sure.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, how terrifying would that have been to someone who was owning slaves but down in Mississippi? Like, why would you have to worry about someone coming chopping you up with swords? You're not up in Kansas. Like, it's specifically terrorizing like the pro-slavery forces that were moving up there to cause trouble in Kansas. I don't know. Like it's I mean,
it was almost more of an assassination. Like he had specific targets.
Yeah, that's and you know, maybe it does spread like wider fear, but again, only among like the people who were crazy enough to have gone out to Kansas.
Yeah, move their whole shit out there.
Yeah, to go and, you know, try to shoot at people and shit. Like they know what they're getting into. There was nobody going out there just to
I'm just a hardworking Missouri farmer.
Yeah, I mean, there were people moving.
There were, but like, yeah, those guys were there specifically to fight for slavery. Like they brought guns. Yeah. They were combatants.
Point is, no sympathy for those guys.
No, not at all. Like, I'm glad they're dead.
Yeah.
Oh, also that historian like has lectured on behalf of the U.S. State Department, so like, I don't know.
Not the best. Well, so you said his that sort of time period ends in like 1970. Then do you know of any like of the historians who started the kind of revisionist work on him?
I don't know their names offhand, but I do know, yeah, like more recent history has like taken a more nuanced approach to it of like, yeah, this was like maybe nuts on this was a bad plan level. Like, I don't think he was good at planning this, but yeah, a much more sympathetic view, I would say, in the past, like couple of decades.
So watch where you get your history on this guy.
Yes. Yeah, I think I'm still just so struck by those newspaper interviews of like, everyone's like, yeah, this guy's actually like really smart and like put together, like seems very competent.
Yeah. And then it devolves into, this guy
crazy.
Must have been crazy because he shot at troops to help black people be free.
Yep. All right. Any closing thoughts here?
I didn't do strikes like you did, like you do, but I already, teased my strike, and I stick to it, is that there weren't enough deaths. Like, he didn't succeed.
Should have done more terrorism.
Well, yeah, not just by his hand too, but I mean, like, torching the plantations of the South. We've got altogether too many plantation weddings and stuff down here still.
Yeah, that should be gone.
Yeah, because of the undone work of John Brown's slave rebellion,
If you get married on a plantation, John Brown will fucking haunt your ass forever. He will stab you with his ghost sword in your sleep, and you'll be like, why do I keep having weird dreams? Like, that's him.
I always picture these as like broadswords. I hope that's what it was.
No,
like
they were. The swords they used to murder those guys were broadswords.
Okay, awesome.
It wasn't like a little bayonet.
Like a little rapier?
It was this fucking broadsword.
Okay. That's what I pictured. But yeah, just a few plantations going up in flames.
Could have used more fire.
A massive slave army parading through the South, liberating. That's what I would have liked. The good ending. But that's not really a strike on him. That's just me wishing,
Yeah, I mean, I think my only strike would be the train decision was bizarre to me. Like, come on, man. You knew to cut the telegraph, so, like, why would you, like, let the train go send another telegram somewhere else?
Yeah, not a good one there.
Yeah, that's a tactical strike, though, not a moral one.
Yeah, he's not, like, fucking up or, like, I'm just gonna embezzle some money or I'm just gonna, have one slave or something. I don't know, like, he's not erring in those ways,
Yeah, I mean, our typical pitfalls are like what? Wanton violence, which we talked about. He doesn't really do. What else do people typically trip up on? Oh, like being sexist or racist. I don't know about sexist, but he was not racist.
Yeah.
He did pretty good.
I would say I really admire his willingness to put his life on the line, to really literally go do something.
Yeah. I mean, he just packed up his shit and moved. It was like, all right, time to go take this fight to them.
Well, and everyone else, when facing the great evils of their society, the best they could do was what we were doing.
Don't forget to vote.
Was, not that bad. Yeah,
no,
sure.
I know. I've just seen so many tweets like, ugh.
Yeah, it's bad out there now. In the face of what will be our modern fugitive abortion act or whatever they come up with in the future. That's what the liberals will be saying, go vote, please.
Go vote.
But but a lot of people back then in the abolitionist circles were doing essentially what we're doing, was just posting. They were just
newspapers,
doing
pamphlets. Oh yeah.
Or going to give a speech and stuff like that, which was fine, and it raised awareness and it pushed the population eventually for that position to be popular enough to where Lincoln's elected in 1816. You do kick off the Civil War, but John Brown, he said he wasn't content with that. He wasn't just going to spread the word or give speeches. He, took action. Do you think that's more admirable, or is that, an easy way out? Is that oh, I'm just going to do this big, silly, vain attempt that, even, Frederick Douglass can see is not going to work, and it'll make me feel good. It'll, make me a martyr. It'll be brave, but it doesn't actually do anything. You know what I mean? Is that the kind of negative interpretation of it?
I mean, I struggle with relating to that negative interpretation because, I don't think, he had a plan. It wasn't particularly a good plan, and, maybe he should have done some more upfront prep to, I think if he had waited till he got more guys, I think that would have been huge. And yeah, done more of that on the ground recruiting from the nearby plantations, something like that, where that he had a bigger force. I think that was really what fucking bit him in the ass. I would have considered it more of a straight suicide martyr mission if he had not taken time to set up a government and, a documented thing of that. He wanted this to keep going. He had a greater vision for it than just I'm going to go die here.
Yeah, that's true. It was clearly not purposefully a failure. He didn't set it up to fail. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I go with the positive interpretation that it was a brave stand, that it was more than so many people were willing to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's my main takeaway from this, is that I so admire his conviction, and the guy had a moral code and knew what did and didn't pass it. And he said, well, I'm going to go stop the shit that doesn't pass it. How many of us can fucking say we do that?
For real. It's, don't beat yourself up about it too much.
Oh, yeah. I'm not expecting everyone to go out there with their broadswords today.
Yeah, but it is something to keep in mind. In our own ways, we can take action more often than we do. And we should try to, we should aspire to. We're going to fall short of John Brown's example, probably. But we should try to come closer to it,
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can look at some of the other actions he did, like, the Underground Railroad, like, not talking to cops. Finding ways to support, like, a larger network of things, like the mutual defense thing, and even, like, the fundraising aspect of, like, yeah, I'm going to go out there and, like, fucking talk up this cause. Like, that's something.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, I think he's cool. I like his song, and I like his big beard. The end. Smiley face sticker, turn and report. I gave myself my own sticker. I didn't wait for you to give me a sticker.
You just reached up, took him off my desk, slapped one on there.
Yeah.
That's fine. It was good.
Thanks.
Good report.
Thank you.
A+.
Hey, thank you. All right, what are we doing next week?
Next week, we're going to do a little theory. We're going to read Anarchy by Malatesta, Enrico Malatesta.
That's a cool name. That sounds cool. Like, I don't know. I'm immediately trying to translate it to Spanish, even though I know it's not Spanish. I'm like, it's bad. It sounds like he's testy.
So he was an Italian anarchist. This work was written in 1891, and it kind of, talks about anarchy. And we haven't done anarchist stuff in a little while.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
So we figured we'd, branch out. We're ecumenical here, so.
Great. Looking forward to it. I like my little anarchy stripe.
Yeah, you do. I dabble. So you can find that on the Anarchist Library. So if you just Google the Anarchist Library, Enrico Malatesta, and find Anarchy there, like they have all of his works. You can also, I think, find this on Marxist.org, but I figured I would go like to the, to the
source.
main source. Yeah.
Yeah.
But get it wherever you want it. It's free because it's old. So
I love that. All right. Awesome. Well, have a good day. How do we end this?
I'll see you next time.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Hey there, comrades. Just jumping in to remind you of all of our social media. We are on Twitter at teachcommunism, Instagram at teachmecommunism. You can shoot us an email. That's teachmecommunism@gmail.com. Any of those places are good to send us an episode suggestion or a question, anything you think would be useful feedback for us, or just your admiration. If you want to admire us in a public manner, and you should, you can go to Apple Podcasts to give us a review. It is the best way to help people find the show. Love when people rate and review us. Please do both. We are also on YouTube, if that's how you prefer to listen to podcasts, or if you know someone that's the only way they'll listen to podcasts, send them to our page. And we have a Patreon. For $5 a month, you get access to our notes for each week's episode, including the backlog of notes, which is a very handy resource for up-and-coming commies. And at the end of the year, all of the funds from Patreon will be given to local mutual aid in the DFW area. So, ain't going to line our pockets. Finally, we have merch. Check us out at TeePublic. You can find shirts and I believe also stickers and magnets and all kinds of fun stuff with catchphrases from the show or episode art, stuff like that. The link to that store is in the show notes, so check that out. Okay, that's all the internet. Join us next time for another episode of Teach Me Communism, where the class struggle is always in session. Bye, y'all.